Disney cares more about if a movie makes money than if it's actually good. That's just true, and I don't really think that's something that can be argued at this point. Back in the day, sure, quality was key because there wasn't a clear formula for what made money. We got all of these original, fresh, creative concepts that nobody had ever made before because everyone was chasing the next great idea. But now, it seems like Disney seems to be operating under the mindset that the great ideas have come and gone, and the best thing for them as a studio is to stick to the formula. One way that they do that is through remaking old animated films as live action, pouring huge budgets into movies that they know are going to make them money. And I'm not saying that the idea itself is a bad one. In fact, there are certain aspects about live action remakes that I can respect. For example, let's say that there's a child that's grown up on the new stuff, the Zootopias and the Moanas, and they haven't been exposed to the older 2D animated movies like Snow White and Cinderella. Those movies are both over 75 years old now, so remaking them does two things. First, it allows Disney to take advantage of technology that wasn't around back then that can make the movie better. Instead of spending a month animating hundreds of frames that add up to 10 seconds of screen time, they can create these vibrant, beautiful worlds and then decide how to frame the characters within them. You can take modern filmmaking practices and apply them to your movie. You can take monsters and animals and make them hyper-realistic and more immersive. There's just a lot more creative control at your fingertips. And the second thing it allows you to do is introduce this new generation to these classic stories that there's no guarantee they ever would have found. When I was growing up, I don't know for sure that I would have had any interest in watching the Jungle Book from 1967, but I did have an interest in seeing this brand new action film in the jungle with real looking talking animals. And for the Jungle Book specifically, not only was Disney taking an older story and showing it to a new generation, but they were also changing it in ways that reflected a true dedication to making it good, not just a soulless shot-for-shot remake. You go out and get a director like Jon Favreau and he darkens the tone, changes character arcs, changes character sizes to make them more intimidating. There was a clear objective to change what needed to be changed in order to make it better. For Cinderella, they brought in Kenneth Branagh to direct, and he changed things up. There was a deeper backstory for Cinderella. Her relationship with the prince was more fleshed out and detailed. It was just clear that not only were they remaking these old movies for the two reasons I mentioned earlier, the modern filmmaking innovations and the new generation, but they were also looking at these movies and saying, now that we're decades upon decades removed from this film, what lessons have we learned from it? What can we change in this remake to make it even stronger than it was back then? And to be honest, I think that worked. I prefer the live-action Jungle Book to the animated. I prefer the live-action Cinderella to the animated. I enjoyed what they were doing in the 2010s. But then things changed. In 2017, Disney decided to remake Beauty and the Beast, a movie that wasn't made in the 50s or the 60s, but rather in the 90s, 1991 to be specific. And it was good, don't get me wrong, but it was clearly Disney starting to bend on the rules they had laid out for themselves. They weren't really showing this movie to a new generation. Sure, some kids probably hadn't seen Beauty and the Beast, but pretty much everybody's parents had, so the amount of kids that had been shown that story before the live-action film came out was a lot higher. And then in 2019, Disney remade The Lion King, which came out in 1994, even more recent than anything else up to this point. And in terms of popularity, there were very few kids that hadn't seen the Lion King animated film, so Disney was essentially completely getting rid of that generational aspect. Then you remake Aladdin from 1992, then Mulan from 1998, and now look what we have. This week, Disney is releasing a live-action remake of Moana, a movie that came out not in 1996, not 2006, but in 2016, barely 10 years ago. There are going to be some kids that go and see this movie that saw the original in the theaters. That's insane. Say what you will, but there is no way to justify remaking a movie for the same generation you made it for in the first place. And I think the worst part about it is that it's so blatantly obvious why they're doing it. Do you know what the most watched movie on Disney Plus was in 2020? Moana. Most watched in 2023? Moana. In 2024? Moana. And in 2025, Moana 2. It's so obvious that Disney sees how much today's kids love this movie, and so instead of letting them continue to watch it on Disney Plus like they already are, they decide that the way that they can make the most money off of it is to release a different version in theaters. But unlike those other remakes like Jungle Book and Cinderella, where they made changes in order to cater it to what the new generation likes or what they thought would work better for the movie, they already have the sample size they need because the generation they're making Moana for is the same generation that is still eating up the original animated film. So in terms of making changes, switching things up in hopes of making the movie better, what do you imagine Disney is thinking right now? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If everyone is still so in love with the original Moana, then let's just do the same thing since that's what they love. Instead of changing storylines and fleshing things out being a benefit of remaking a movie, it now becomes a risk. Why jeopardize your guaranteed product when you know it works the way it is already? Let's look at it this way. The Jungle Book remake is 28 minutes longer than the original, almost a half hour of extra content and new material added in to try to make the story better. The Cinderella remake is a full 30 minutes longer. Now let's look at Moana. The difference is only 12 minutes. You add in the fact that live-action movies have longer credits than animated films, along with a new song being thrown in, and all of that leaves us with about 5 minutes of actual difference between the original and the remake. That's barely any new story at all. I'm not saying that 5 minutes isn't a substantial amount of time for a movie. You can do a lot in 5 minutes, and this new Moana may do that, but I just don't really see them changing anything up that much. I mean, look at the trailers. Instead of feeling like an actual trailer meant to get you excited for a movie, it feels more like a collection of greatest hits of the visuals of the first film. Like, hey, remember when The Rock sang "You're welcome"? Well, look at this, it's live action now. Remember that big talking crab from the first movie? Well, look at this, it's live action now. Remember Maui turning into the shark and the screaming chicken and the little coconut pirates? Yeah, they're live action now. At least in my opinion, this feels like the first Disney live action remake that doesn't feel like its own product. Obviously, it's a movie that's separate from the original, but you know what I mean. It has absolutely zero identity outside of the film it's modeled after. And it's not just Moana either. Tangled is apparently getting its own live-action remake, a movie that came out in 2010. And that's a little bit more forgivable. By the time that movie comes out, there will be a decent gap between that and the original, at least big enough to stretch from one generation of kids to the next. But why do we have to do this at all? And I know the answer to that question. Like I said at the start of the video, it's money. But what's the solution to all of this? In my perfect world, we go back to the way things used to be. Disney uses the $200 million they spent on Moana, or the whopping $270 million they spent on Snow White, and instead split it up and use it on 2 or 3 really great original animated movies that can grow into icons on their own. And sure, not every one of these movies is going to be a hit. I recognize that. In fact, they're on a bit of a cold stretch right now. But you've got Encanto and Zootopia 2 over the last couple years to show you that yes, they do still work if you make them good. But that's just my dream version of how they spend that money. For the suits running Disney, they want the outcome that is going to get them the most return on their investment, the biggest profit for their dollar, the biggest bang for their buck. And as much as I hate it, that is always going to be taking characters and stories that people recognize, changing them from animated to live action in order to claim that you're doing something different enough to make it worth making, which we all know it's not, and dishing it out like it's something fresh and new. Kids recognize the characters, beg to go see the movie, parents want to make the kids happy, so the whole family goes. And what does Disney do? Sit back, take in the cash, and start looking through the catalog of creative, original, and fresh movies for the one that will make them the most money next. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I want to know what you think about this in the comments down below. Do you like Disney remaking their classic hits, or do you think it's time for them to refocus on making new films with new ideas? It's a situation with a lot of different angles to it, so I genuinely love to hear all of your perspectives on this. If you want to help with the channel, you can subscribe for more videos like this. We're trying to hit 500 subs as soon as possible. But with that being said, thanks again for watching, and God bless.